thinks I'm this slut when I'm not, like I wasn't. And I'm getting abused at home, and this guy doesn't love me as like my stepdad either. So I think, it just kind of all got really overwhelming. And that's when I decided I just didn't want to be there anymore.
Welcome to Brown Girls Need Healing Too, the podcast where we dive deep into the journey of healing, transformation, and radical self love. I'm Kiana, and I'm here to help you break free from trauma, reconnect with your inner peace, and step boldly into the life you deserve. This is your space to feel seen, heard, and supported as we explore the tools, stories, and practices that will help you reclaim your power and rewrite your story. Because healing isn't just for some of us, it's for all of us. And brown girls need healing too.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you for having me on this podcast. I'm so excited for you in this new journey that you're paving. It's blossoming so beautifully, and it's just so nice to see you stepping into your element of power. And I just feel like you're just doing everything that you want to do for yourself at the moment, and it's just truly beautiful to see. But my name is Elisha. For those of you who don't know me, I am a multi six figure business owner. I own Beauty X Leash as well as Digital Wealth Empire. So I own a teeth whitening company as well as a digital marketing agency as well. I've been in business now since 2017, and honestly, it's a journey for all of those out there that are listening who are business owners. You get me. It is rough sometimes, but that's what this podcast today is all about.
Yes. What was your childhood like?
Oh man, we're starting off strong, aren't we?
Yeah.
um Childhood was rough, to be completely honest. Like my whole childhood was not the greatest. I can't sit here and sugarcoat it and say I was one of those kids who had this like sheltered childhood where like with the happy family and all of that, because I wasn't. There was a lot of abuse growing up in my household. My mom obviously did not stay with my dad. She had me very, very young. She had me at 17, and then she got with someone new and had my brother. However, the man that she was with was extremely abusive, like to the point where I have memories of him, breaking her wrist, pushing her down the stairs, like being very, very abusive to me and my brother as well, mainly me because I wasn't actually his child. And it led to a wide variety of, hating myself as a person growing up. And then obviously going into your older years, whether it be like 10, 11, 12, going into high school or end of elementary school for that matter. And then just kind of not knowing who you are as a person. You know what I mean?
Watching your mom in that toxic relationship, did you go through any toxic relationships that were abusive?
Yeah, yeah, because obviously I didn't have my dad around, like my biological father. He was heavily into drugs, such as like fentanyl, methamphetamine, all of that. He was an addict. So I never really had that side of my family. I didn't know that side of my family at all until I was about 13 when I found my grandparents on that side of the family. And obviously, when you get into your teenage years, boys start to come around and this and that. But I kept having like this shitty cycle in men where they were cheaters, they were mean, they were terrible. And I just couldn't seem to break the cycle because I was never shown that level of love. And people like you can laugh about it. I laugh about it all the time. Like, ha ha ha, daddy issues. But like, I think like because of the fact that my mom was in this abusive cycle, she couldn't show me the love that I needed, and I never had that love from a father essentially either because he was extremely abusive towards me as well. That you end up just making these really shitty choices for people that you want to be with because you don't have that level of boundary and you don't know what love is meant to feel like.
Did your mom have any struggles with mental health, anxiety, or depression?
Um, you know how it goes back in the day. Like everybody kind of like buries their emotions. Like it was only really the last year and a half that I got my mom to actually go to therapy because at the end of the day, she has serious childhood trauma. And, she did a couple sessions for a couple months and then like kind of hung her hat up and we're trying to get her back onto it again. But I think definitely underlying depression, anxiety, all of that, because how could you not? Like she didn't grow up in the greatest household with her mother. And all of that has essentially a knocking effect. And I think it's just you're growing up in this household where you're meant to suppress your depression and anxiety. Like for the longest time as I was growing up, like she had the mindset that like it doesn't exist. Like depression doesn't exist and like it's not a thing. So like I never really had those conversations with her in terms of like, oh, I feel sad or I feel this or that.
Because you essentially didn't have the tools to deal with, your anxiety or depression. How long were you struggling with those things before you decided to get help?
It was a really long time to be honest. Like the abuse in the household went on for probably until I was 15 or 16 before I could actually make the decision to leave. And but up until that point, you're kind of stuck in the situation that you're in. And it was a knocking effect on different things. Like I would say that I struggled from when I was 10 or even 9 to be honest because like in grade 6, 7 and 8 I really struggled with self-harm and things like that. And then obviously got bullied at school because of the self-harm, so it just then sends you into another spiral of depression because not only are you having um, a shit time at home, but then you go to school and you don't want to go to school because you're getting bullied for the fact of your self-harming.
And when you say self-harm, what do you mean?
So in terms of cutting, so there was a lot of self-harm with cutting. And then once I entered into grade 9, I did attempt suicide. And then that became a whole big drama at school. And I think like when the suicide attempt did happen, that's kind of when my mom got a reality check about mental health and didn't realize like, oh shit, like mental health's like a real thing. And it it's literally like a black abyss where some days you're lucky to get out of bed. Like I would make up excuses to not go to school, until obviously I finally did do the attempt because the abuse in the house was just so bad. And it was, I believe it was grade 9 that attempt happened. And I took an entire bottle of Tylenol. And I remember, and it also attempted to hang myself, which clearly did not work, but attempted to, take the whole bottle of Tylenol. It was actually my grandmother, who may she rest in peace. Like I told her what I did because my mom knew something was wrong. I had marks all over my neck, and she obviously knew something was wrong. But basically, like whenever something was wrong, she would send me off to my grandparents' house because she knew that I would talk to them. They were like my safe place. And that's when I told her everything. And I got really, really sick. Like the obviously the amount of pills that I swallowed was it clearly was enough to kill someone, but I got really, really ill and like was admitted into a hospital for 2 weeks. So it was really, really tough.
I had a similar instance in middle school. And that's the thing that's shitty about like pain and suffering and like just feeling lonely around people that, are supposed to love you and are supposed to see that you're drowning and you're suffering and the suicide attempt is just merely a calling out for help, like somebody please see me, somebody please save me. So I hear you on that. I think I was in middle school and I was just like depressed. I didn't have anyone to talk to. I grew up an only child. I was just alone and I remember I don't even know if I would call it a suicide attempt, but it was like my fake suicide attempt. I pretended to drink bleach, but it was actually like baby oil and I told like my neighbors went
I attempted that.
downstairs.
I attempted that too.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I
That's so
attempted that as well. And I was known in high school as the girl that drank bleach. Like everybody made fun of me for years
that's
because yeah, it was like, oh, she's the girl that drank bleach, or like you know how people are in high school, like they're just assholes, and everything's a game at that point, and everybody's like, go drink bleach, bitch, like all this stuff in high school, and you're just like, this is not actually making the situation any better.
yeah, no, exactly. And I remember I went down to my neighbors and I was telling them like, oh, I drink bleach, and they called my mom, and they obviously had heard, like, there are downstairs neighbors, so they obviously heard like instances of me getting beat, or I'm crying or screaming. And I think at one point they had called CPS. Um but that was like my last and final cry for help. I don't even remember what happened after that, but I think my life got a little bit better. And that was like my goal. Like I just need something needs to change. But what what was the catalyst for that moment for you where you decided like, hey, I don't want to be here anymore?
um there was a couple different reasons. So one, I was getting bullied at school before I even attempted suicide, because I was seeing this guy, and he, like, we did some stuff at that age, and basically I had told a friend, and at that point in my life I really was the first person in that friend group to have done anything with a boy.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of it just spiraled, to be honest. Like the entire school knew basically what happened between me and this boy. And so I was known as a slut, as a whore. Like, when, to be honest, at that moment in my life, like the guy that I did anything with, like I trusted him, I loved him, whatever you consider love was at that time. And then obviously having to deal with everything going on at home as well, where you're just like, okay, well, I can't go to school because everybody thinks I'm this slut when I'm not, like I wasn't. And I'm getting abused at home, and this guy doesn't love me as like my stepdad either. So I think, it just kind of all got really overwhelming, and that's when I decided I just didn't want to be there anymore.
Can I just tell you, it's so weird how many similar instances we have because I lost my virginity to, I was a slut. I mean, I guess if you want to call it that.
What?
I lost my virginity to someone who, like, he was super nice to me, super funny. But he was like a football player. He dated a cheerleader, and this was in high school. And, I thought they had broken up. I wasn't sure. I think he told me that they did. Anyways, fast forward, I ended up losing my virginity to him. He ended up telling her, she told everyone. So I was the slut at school. And then to make matters worse, like a little bit after that, his best friend started like paying attention to me and showing me attention. I ended up sleeping with him too. So I was
Oh
like,
goodness.
slut times two, right? And so I definitely, understand what you mean, where it's like you don't feel safe at home and you're not safe at school either, and you have nowhere, you have
And you're
nowhere.
like, you have nowhere to turn, like
Yeah.
literally nowhere, because you're just miserable at home. It's like when I was home, all I was doing was staying in my bedroom, because if you
Same.
crossed him in the wrong way, then you just never knew how he was going to react. Like, he would beat me black and blue, like literally black and blue. Like, there's several occurrences where I can remember where I was literally black on my skin, you know what I mean? So, and then you go to school and it's like, well, this is fucking miserable as well, you know? So
Mhm.
it's hard. And then that's kind of how you spiral.
Yeah, no, it is. It is. And at that age that we were at, it's like we're looking for love. And it didn't feel like it at the time. It psychologically, I don't know what I was doing, but I think I was just looking for someone to care about me. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I ended up being super, I guess I wouldn't say super promiscuous, but I slept with a lot of men too fast, too soon.
You gave that coochie up.
I sure did for free.
God.
But
No, but I was just like, I was like a hardcore lover girl, okay? Like if I liked you, I loved you off. Like that was just it's kind of how I always have been, to be honest. Like if I'm with you, I'm with you.
Yeah.
Um, but I just chose the worst men to choose.
You know, I thank you so much for sharing that because that was very insightful, and I think a lot of people go through that. So with you getting beat by your stepdad and you having your mom there, like what was obviously she didn't step in, I'm guessing. Do you feel like that created resentment, for your mom?
Me and my mom had a really, really bad relationship. Like we only recent, well, not, I wouldn't say recent, but I'd say we really started to get close probably in like 2015, 2016 as I started getting older. So like in my 20s. But for a really long time, I did resent her. Like I couldn't get along with her because I felt like she was always choosing the relationship over me and my brother and sister. And we had a really bad relationship. Like I moved out. I made my grandparents come and pick me up with all my stuff and said I'm never coming back. And obviously that broke her, right? And looking back at it now, like it hurts because it's like she's still in vicious cycles in different scenarios, but I had a way out essentially. That's the way that I looked at it. Like I had a way to move and be in a happy house where I could have boundaries and rules essentially and people to lead me in a way that I didn't know that I needed to be led at that age. And so there was resentment for sure. But then obviously when I moved out, she held resentment, of course, towards me and towards my grandparents because of the fact that they let me move out. But I love my mom like so much and I literally drop dead for her. Like she is my entire world. And at one point she wasn't. And she knows that. And it was a really, really hard turning point. And then I moved away. Like I left the country. Like I've always been a traveling bird. So I think like now that we've had that space between us, like I can really appreciate her as a person and obviously understanding so much that I do know about mental health. It's just like we're all struggling in some way.
For sure. Do you feel like you've forgiven your mom at this point and your stepdad?
Um, I think like well, to be honest, haven't seen him in years. Like I probably haven't seen him since I was 17 or 16, and I'm 31 now. Um, I feel like I've let it go, but I don't let it go in the sense of how it affects my life. Like there's still trauma that's buried, and like it's a lot of inner work that you constantly have to do to one, know that you're good enough, and two, not hold that resentment and anger. Like you just have to let it go. I don't resent her. I wish she made better choices and I wish she had the strength to make better choices. But
So fast forward to, you're going through your struggles and you don't really have many coping mechanisms and you're still self-harming at this point. Is-
I really only self-harmed for 2 years. Like I never did after my suicide attempt, I never attempted again. Um, like you said, I really do think it was a cry for help. Like,
Yeah.
and I mean, it put a lot of stress on my mom, right? Because like I'll never forget the look on her face when she found out that that's what I was doing and what I tried to do. Like it's something that I'll always remember. I stopped self-harming. Like I said, I self-harmed, then attempted, and then I was in a psychiatric ward for 2 weeks with a psychotherapist. Um, Basically just working through mechanisms and things like that. But at that time, I refused therapy. Like I still didn't see how like the depths of mental health and like what it can do to you, even after attempting.
Yeah. So what was your life like when you decided to get on medication to help you, manage your, it's a biological. chemical imbalance? Is that what they
Yeah,
refer to it as?
I suppose, yeah. Like I have been diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and depression. That's something I was diagnosed with at multiple stages in my life because I've seen multiple doctors. And I fought medication for a really long time, and medication never really came up for me as a deciding factor until I'd say about 2018 maybe, or 2018, where I started actually really thinking about it. But I didn't actually start medication until 2021. And that was because of the fact of a relationship that had ended where it was extremely toxic. And, I've done a lot of healing and inner work to heal that portion of my life. And but that relationship, the way that that relationship went, the narcissism, the gaslighting, the love bombing, you know there was so much of that where it wore me down. Like it wore me down on so many levels that it kind of just chips away at you slowly. And then what I realized is that I was bringing those problems, that the abuse that I was having, like whether it was mental abuse, physical abuse, whatever the case is, but I was bringing that into my next relationship, and I needed to break the cycle.
Love, like real, true, pure love is such a beautiful thing. And same for me with my relationship. Like in the beginning, my husband was the one that we focused on because he was battling, his addiction to alcohol. And so for majority of our relationship, that was our focus. And when he got clean and when he got sober, it was like, well, the flashlight is shining on me. And then, I realized like I have all these issues and childhood trauma and anger that I need to work through because I love him so much. And I would hate to hurt him, the way that I'm hurting inside. So I love that you decided to, make a change to better yourself because of yourself and because of your fiance. What
Yes, my fiance.
Hey, how did the medication affect you and did you feel better immediately? How did you know it was working?
um, so when it came to the medication, I basically started off on citalopram, and I honestly felt like a walking zombie. Like I had no idea what was going on. I was not hungry. I was crying more than ever. And my mom actually flew out because I was living in England already. I was living in England probably for 3 or 4 months before I decided to go on antidepressants because I realized like I was so broken from the last relationship that I needed the antidepressants to be able to actually think clearly so that I could begin to heal. And so the citalopram just wasn't working. And anybody who's been on antidepressants for a long time, like they'll be the first to tell you one size does not fit all with antidepressants. There's some people that need to try a variety of different types of antidepressants before actually finding essentially their perfect cocktail, if you call it. But citalopram wasn't working, and it was actually making my anxiety and depression like 1,000 times worse. And then that's when I got switched by the doctor to sertraline. And the doctor put me on, I think he started me on 25 milligrams. And then your body gets your body gets used to it. And by the end of it, before I started coming off, I was up to 100 milligrams, just to kind of mask that anxiety that just kind of kept coming back through.
How has your struggles with your mental health impacted your relationship with your fiance?
It's a lot, to be honest. Like, I think my fiance knows me better than any person on this planet because, to be honest, he spends every waking day with me. And he is the most patient man that I have ever met in my entire life. Like, he didn't have a good understanding of mental health before, that's for sure. And slowly over time, He's really learned to understand what it's like for me and the struggles that I really do have. But it has been a journey for sure. Like my my agitation levels can come in hot sometimes where I'm just super snappy or I'm super hot-headed and or I just my social battery is so low that I literally just can't even have a conversation. And at first, it was really, really difficult for him, but he handles it so well. And I think as the years have gone on, it's just all about communication and, me getting better at communicating it more than anything. Like, if I'm feeling shitty, I don't need to feel bad for saying I feel shitty today. You know what I mean?
Mhm. So, do you or did you ever feel any guilt around like taking medication or being bullied in school makes you very aware of things that people may criticize you about. So do you feel like that was something that you cared, what people thought about of you?
Um, at first, yes, but I'm very lucky to have a an amazing support system of friends, family, all around me, a partner. And, it was a journey at first, and it was kind of like, I don't really want to be talking about this because it's such a taboo thing. Like, oh, she's crazy. She has to be on antidepressants. You know what I mean? And that's obviously with everything I'd already gone through in the past, it's like kind of resurfaces to those things, right? But, over time, what I realized, I'm like, you know what? Like everything that I've gone through, my story is a testament. Like it is so powerful for someone else to know that no matter what you're going through, there is hope even when your brain tells you otherwise. And if that medication was able to help me for a specific period of time to be able to, one, be able to take a step back instead of exploding, right? Because that was a huge issue I had. I could never just like process anything. It was always just like I blew up. Um, then my biggest thing was to make it known about mental health. Like, no, I don't feel like anybody talks about mental health enough. It's not talked about. It's a taboo subject. People are scared to be judged. And I made it, even though I run a teeth whitening and a beauty business, I made it an absolute mission to ensure that I'm talking about my mental health on a regular basis on my platform.
It is so strange to me that it is a topic that's taboo. Like, it makes no sense to me how 1 in 5 people are suffering from a mental health disease or disorder. And some people, most people are undiagnosed. And for the people who have the diagnosis and choose not to get help, it's interesting to me because I'm like, we have so many resources nowadays. Why wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? But I definitely, I understand everyone takes their own journey. And for me, I've realized like with my own personal healing journey is that people don't listen to you when you tell them what to do. They kind of listen to you, or they're more susceptible to what you have to say when you show them what to do. And it's like, for me, I was diagnosed with generalized anxiety too. And I remember, my family, talking to my family about it, and I would say things like, oh, I'm just worried about this, or et cetera, et cetera. And the worst thing you can say to someone with anxiety is,
Turn it
don't
off.
worry about it.
Oh my God. Just turn it off. Everything's fine. Your life is great. Everything's fine.
Right. Like, if I could turn this shit off, I promise you, I would not care. I promise.
Right. You think I want to wake up every single day with a fucking elephant on my chest? Like, who would want that every day? Let me just leave it turned on like a switch and then turn it off when I want to. Like, do you know what I mean? It's
I
just
do. I do. And it's so funny, but then I realize like how many people are in denial of themselves. And so I think somewhere in that journey, my anxiety was what brought me to the place that I am today, like being such an empathetic person and caring and like, aware of myself and how I treat others and how I make others feel. So although, I had anxiety, it was also a gift and it's what helps me help other people. So I commend you for, taking a step out on your own, especially with your history of like, not having people support you or people make fun of you, that takes such a huge amount of strength. So hats off to you for that.
Oh, thank you, my love. That's so sweet. No, it's definitely been a journey, and don't get me wrong, whenever I post something about mental health or I talk about mental health, I think back to the days that it was a lot darker than it was now. Like there's been multiple different cases in my life where I can say the times were dark and you don't feel like you're going to get out of that darkness, you know? But I think the whole main purpose of me just talking about it as much as I do is like, just like you said, it's not talked about enough, and people do live in denial. And the amount of messages that I get from people whenever I post something about mental health, thank you so much for sharing this. You have no idea what I've been going through. Do you mind if I share my own story with you? Can you give me some advice? How's coming off your antidepressants been? Like it's wild, and it honestly brings me joy to be able to just shed light on my experiences, you know?
You feel like you are the same person today that you were 5 years ago?
No, no, definitely not. 5 years ago was a very dark time in my life, and I'm definitely not in that same place for sure. I've learned a lot of strategies. Like I've done a lot of therapy. I had a lot of anger, right? So I've gone through anger therapy. I've done cognitive behavioral therapy. I've done, a lot of mindset therapy. Like I heavily have invested in myself and my brain, the way that it's developing, unpacking things that I don't want to unpack over the last 5 years. And I think with doing that, you have to understand that sometimes bringing that stuff up is going to be uncomfortable, but you need to be uncomfortable if you ever want to grow.
You need to feel it to heal it.
Exactly. Yes. I love that.
That's what they say. And I feel like I'm like an avid healer or feeler. I'm sorry. I feel things way too deeply. Um, but
I
one
feel that.
thing one thing I believe in like with all of my heart and my soul and every fiber of my being is that, I believe in the certainty of the goodness of the future, and I feel like everyone's life is a uh, evidence that it does get better, and making minor changes to your mindset or minor changes to resources that you elect to participate in, it makes a huge difference. And I feel like a lot of people think that, small changes don't make a difference, but they really, really do. And your life is a testament to that. My life is a testament to that. Every person who was in a toxic relationship who decided to leave the relationship is a testament to that. It gets better and better and better. And each failure is just aligning you to the highest vibrating version of yourself. It feels shitty. It feels like failure in the moment. It feels like the world's ending, but at the end of it, it's just such a beautiful thing to see how we grow and we evolve.
As long as you choose to, though, right? Like people who are just getting themselves in the same situations over and over again and expecting a different result. And to be honest, that was me at one point. I didn't understand, like, going through the same thing or taking back the same crappy person. Why isn't it changing? Why am I still feeling like this? You know what I mean? So you do need, unfortunately, to make some big, powerful moves in order to take those bigger steps towards healing. You know what I mean? Because it's just like nothing changes if nothing changes.
Facts. Big facts. And
Yeah.
one thing I'd love to preach about that most people don't understand is that in order to change your like outer reality, you have to change what's inside. Like you have to change the way that you think. Otherwise, nothing else is going to change. And a lot of times people change their reality hoping that that makes them feel better inside. And it just doesn't work like that.
No, it absolutely doesn't, because if you're constantly just trying to change your outer reality, but you're not doing the inner work, and listen, I'll be straight up, doing the inner work is harder than doing my job sometimes, like
It
harder than running my business. And you'll be the first to understand that. Like running your business is on autopilot m most of the time, to be honest. But
Yeah,
when you're doing the inner work, all that trauma that you're pulling out, or like that sadness and that anger that you have held up inside you, that is work. Like it's crazy the amount of inner work that you need to do to actually get to that good place. Most people don't want to do it because it's too much work. People like easy.
yeah, 1000%. And people, I've realized people aren't able to look at those dark parts of themselves. That's the inner work, is looking at the dark parts of yourself. The parts that wish ill upon others, or has, you're jealous or malicious or vindictive, all the things that I had to face in my own journey to be where I am today. But it's uncomfortable for people because people, we live in a society where society tells you this is who you have to be in order to be accepted. And so we conform to that. And, people are afraid to step outside of that shell. But I'll be damned. I will be damned if I live the remainder of my life for anyone else but me.
And in that bubble, exactly.
Yes.
And you know what they say? Like, I've heard this quote before, and it's like, you need to water the darkest parts of you. And I feel that to my core, because it's those darkest parts of you that are keeping you wilted as a human being. And without watering that, you're not going to get any better.
That is right. You are literally spot on. You are spot on. So I know you've been through therapy, and I know I see you in the gym. Is the gym your outlet? Like, is that your tool for staying in a good headspace?
Yes. So, as you probably know, or we've actually spoken about it. So, last January, I made a decision that I was going to cut my antidepressants for good, not realizing how difficult the journey was going to be to get rid of those antidepressants. You'd think a little pill would not be as addictive as it was, but it insane. I've always been kind of like a yo-yo gymmer, to be honest. I love to look good. That's just me being blunt and honest. But
Yes.
I also
And you
love the way that it
do.
makes me feel. Thank you. But I also love the way that it makes me feel. However, I was always a yo-yoer, because if I wasn't feeling good, then that means I wasn't going to go to the gym,
Yep.
right? And then as time went on, I was like, this cannot actually work like this. And as I was coming off my antidepressants, I put on 35 pounds throughout that journey, and hated what I looked like during that journey, and signed up to a whole new gym, where I think I did tell you about this, a whole new gym, because I didn't want to go to the gym where there wasn't a community anymore. And I wanted to feel part of something. Do you know what I mean? And like with the classes, like it was nice because there was yoga, there was options, there was spin, there was lift classes. And that is when I got really, really consistent, where it's a non-negotiable for me now that I have to go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week. And it really does help me, especially it's something that I just recently started to love, but I love spin classes, because I can literally shut my brain off throughout the entire class and just focus on the movement. But it's definitely helped, where if I don't go to the gym now, after like 2 days, I feel like a basket case, and I'm like, I need to get endorphins right now.
Yes. First of all, send me some of that. Send me some of that gym love, because I literally live 5 minutes away from the gym, and I'm trying to find my footing there. But, just like you said, something has to change, and nothing's going to change if I don't change. And for me, the conversation we had, just showing up, I think, is going to be such a huge thing for me, because if I'm there, I might do something. I'm more than likely to do something than not. So I commend you on that, for showing up for yourself, even when it's hard, because it's easy to do things when you're motivated and when you're excited about it, but it is damn near impossible to do stuff when you don't want to, especially when you're in your feels. So kudos to you.
Yeah, no, it's been a journey for sure, but I can honestly say the gym is like my happy place now. But it's not even like the actual gym. Like it needs to be the classes that I'm going to. Like I love it. I love it. But for you, like you just need to start, and you'll feel the endorphins. And even if it's like I told you before, even if it's 20 minutes, 30 minutes, it's like get 1% better every single day, and the hard will get easier.
For sure. Yes, I hear you. So, what piece of advice would you give to our listeners who are struggling with their mental health?
Um, to be completely honest, like just like I said earlier, you really need to go inward and water the darkest parts of you. That was the hardest thing for me to actually grasp and understand. I thought by burying all of my problems and all my trauma and just trying to hammer through life that I would be absolutely fine. And boy, I was not. So, whether you are struggling, whether you don't know if you're struggling, just remember to be kind to yourself and give yourself grace. Every day is not going to be amazing. You're going to have really, really shitty days and really, really good days. But as long as you're focusing on getting at least 1% better every day and giving yourself the grace that you deserve, it will get better because I am a living testament of someone who has gotten better through a really shitty time.
If this episode was beneficial to you, and I know it was, do me a favor and share it with somebody that you love, share it with someone you care about, share it with the lady at the office that you can't stand, share it with the boyfriend that cheated on you, anyone and everyone, because everyone deserves a chance at healing. If you're listening to this on YouTube, please leave me a comment. Or if you're listening to this on Amazon, please rate my show. I love you so much, and I'll see you in the next episode.